Coming in at 5, Wampus Cat. The Wampus Cat is a creature in American folklore and, according to legend, is a result of experimentation during World War II. Now, there are more than 22 million acres of forest in Alabama where you can find deadly and terrifying creatures. However, the one whispered about the most and discussed around campfires is the Wampus Cat. Early references by the American Dialect Society noted the Wampus Cat as, I quote, a creature heard whining about camps at night, and a mythical green-eyed cat having occult powers, or even an undefined imaginary animal. Now back to its creation. Allegedly, the US government tried to create a super animal by combining a mountain lion and a grey wolf through genetic splicing, with the goal of creating an incredibly fast and large creature to relay messages. However, things went wrong when a breeding pair escaped, and their descendants, known as the Wampus Cats, still haunt the area around Chihia Mountain in the Talladega National Forest. Folklorist Vance Randolph described the Wampus Cat as a kind of amphibious panther which leaps into the water and swims like a colossal mink. In Cherokee mythology, the monster is the cat-like embodiment of a female onlooker cursed by tribal elders as punishment for hiding beneath the pelt of a large wild cat to witness a sacred ceremony. The Wampus Cat is used as a mascot for numerous educational institutions. The Wampus Cat also has been referenced in pop culture numerous times, specifically by J.K. Rowling on her Pottermore site. In the story, History of Magic in North America, which lists the Wampus Cat as a source for hair used in magic wands. Pretty cool. Coming in at number 4, direwolf. The direwolf was an extinct species of the genus Canis and is one of the most famous prehistoric carnivores in North America, along with its extinct competitor, the saber-toothed cat. Like I said, these creatures are extinct. However, one user from Utah has a different story. I quote, "Not sure what it was called, but I listened to a podcast about cryptids and it talked about basically a modern-day direwolf/human combo that lived on a ranch somewhere in Utah. A family moved into an old ranch and noticed that all the windows and doors were tightly secured and that there had been wolf sightings years ago in that area. The new owner didn't think much of it until they found some dead cows with holes in them. No blood whatsoever. Then the owner saw what looked like a wolf from far away. The wolf creature basically ended up running up to him and he shoots it. The gun does no visible harm though, even though it made a hole in its shoulder. Then the wolf creature casually walks away. The guy ends up looking for one of his missing cows and finds it dead. He also finds a calf getting attacked by the thing and being carried off. If I remember correctly, he tries chasing it down and it outruns him on his horse. The guy doesn't know what he's up against, so he tells a local wildlife expert who shows him different species of wolves. They pass a picture of the creature and the wildlife expert tells him that it's a direwolf and it hasn't been alive for thousands of years. That is absolutely insane. I'm a strong believer in the direwolf and have a sneaking suspicion they are still lurking around here. Hunting somewhere, maybe hunting you. Coming in at number 3, El Chupacabra. Also known as the Chupacabra or Chupacabras, this name translates to goat sucker from chupa to suck and cabra, goat. This is a legendary creature in the folklore of parts of the Americas, with its first purported sighting in Puerto Rico. Now, the name itself comes from the animal's reported habit of attacking and drinking the blood of livestock, including goats. Now, the creature reportedly terrorizes the southwestern US, Puerto Rico, and Mexico, with accounts on the size and shape ranging drastically. Some reports state it is the size of a large bear with spines running down its back, while others report the animal is small and hairless. Reportedly, it can be found in a desert in North America covering over 200,000 miles. Now, eyewitnesses have also claimed sightings in Maine as well as Chile, with sightings even occurring in Russia and the Philippines. Essentially, no goat is safe. The first reported attack occurred in March 1995, 8 sheep being discovered dead, and each one of them with 3 puncture wounds in the chest area and reportedly drained of blood. I see a theme in this list. A few months later, in August, an eyewitness, Madeline Tolentino, reported seeing the creature in the Puerto Rican town of Canovanas, where as many as 150 farm animals and pets were reportedly killed. And in 1975, a similar incident occurred in the small town of Mocha, where it was initially believed the killings were committed by a satanic cult. However, later more killings were reported on the island, and many farms reported loss of animal life, forcing locals to believe that El Chupacabra was hunting their town. Reports and sightings have been noted up until last year, so what do you think? Are you a believer in the Chupacabra? I am. even though I can't say the name very well. Coming in at number 2, Honey Island Swamp Monster. In Louisiana folklore, the Honey Island Swamp Monster is a creature said to have been seen in Honey Island Swamp since 1963. It is described as bipedal, 7 feet tall, with grey hair and yellow or red eyes, and accompanied by a disgusting smell. The first claimed sighting was in 1963 by Harlan Ford, a retired air traffic controller who had taken up wildlife photography. After his death in 1980, a reel of Super 8 film was discovered which showed the creature. In 1974, the monster gained national fame after Ford and his friend Billy Mills claimed to have found unusual footprints in the area, as well as the body of a wild boar whose throat had been cut. Ford continued to hunt for the creature for the next 6 years following that. Now, in folklore, a legend tells of a train wreck in the area in the early 20th century. According to the legend, a travelling circus was on the train, and from it, a group of chimpanzees escaped and interbred with the local alligator population. 2 hunters emerged from the swamp in 1874 saying that they had. Creepy stuff indeed. And finally, coming in at number 1, Pukwudgie. A Pukwudgie is translated by Henry Schoolcraft as little wild man of the woods that vanishes. It is a creature often found in Delaware and Wampanoag folklore, sometimes said to be 4 to 5 feet tall. According to legend, Pukwudgie can appear and disappear at will, as well as lure people to their deaths, use magic, launch poison arrows, and create fire. Yeah, these dudes are not to be messed with. Now, some Native Americans believe that the Pukwudgie was once human, and presumably friends, but then turned against the Native Americans and are best left alone. According to lore, a person who pissed off a Pukwudgie would be subject to nasty tricks by it. Considering they are known to kidnap people, push them off cliffs, attack them with short knives and spears, I would just leave them alone. More interesting still, the Pukwudgie are actually mentioned in Henry Wadsworth Longfellow's epic poem, The Song of Hiawatha. I quote, "Far and wide among the nations spread the name and fame of Kwasin. No man dared to strive with Kwasing. But the mischievous Pukwudgie, they the envious little people, they the fairies and the pygmies, plotted and conspired against him." They have also been identified in the Harry Potter universe, with Rowling describing the creature as, I quote, "The Pukwudgie is also native to America, a short grey-faced, large-eared creature distinctly related to the European goblin. Fiercely independent, tricky, and not over fond of humankind. It possesses its own powerful magic. Pukwudgie hunt with deadly poisonous arrows and enjoy playing tricks on humans. Cool, but incredibly creepy."
Kicking off at number 5, the Loveland Frogmen. Hailing from the misty swamps and vast wetlands of rural Ohio, the Loveland Frogmen, also affectionately known as the Loveland Lizards, are a cryptid unlike no other and have reportedly appeared under several bizarre circumstances on a regular basis in Ohio's Clermont County. Allegedly, the first sightings of these eerie bipedal amphibians first occurred in 1955 and has proven to be one of the most intriguing cryptozoological mysteries in North America. The creatures themselves allegedly live in the temperate forests and wetlands of Clermont County and are able to survive the cold winters of the region without having to hibernate. Useful. During their first sighting at approximately 3:30 AM, a local businessman was driven down a lonely stretch of road, running alongside the Miami River on the outskirts of the small town known as Loveland, Ohio. Suddenly and out of nowhere, the man claimed to have witnessed 3 bipedal quasi-reptilian entities emerge from the dense reeds and begin to congregate by the side of the road. The man slowed down and turned out his lights as he pulled his car up to a curb to observe these creatures further. He claimed that they stood between 3 and 4 feet tall, were covered with leathery skin, and had webbed hands and feet. Their most distinguishing feature though was their distinctly frog-like head, which the man claimed bore deep wrinkles where their hair should have been. Wow, since then over 5 more sightings of the Loveland Frogmen have occurred over a 60-year period. What do you guys think? What's going on, Ohio? Next up at number 4, the Nameless Thing of Berkeley Square. And I absolutely love this story either way, because if you've ever heard of the famed 50 Berkeley Square in London, England, then you'll know that, cryptid or not, this place is terrifying enough. It's proof as well that there are some cases out there which irk on the realm of the paranormal and become a category so unexplainable that they don't really fit into anything, or can fit into anything. I don't know, it's pretty nebulous. Either way though, the haunted legacy of Berkeley Square has featured ghosts and poltergeists the world over, and it's widely considered to be one of the most haunted places in England. But there is one particular instance that takes the cake, the Nameless Thing of Berkeley Square. A tale that takes place in 1840 when a 20-year-old Sir Robert Walboys got into a drunken dare in which he had written off Berkeley Square and its paranormal reputation as a whole load of Kaiser Soze. He put money down that he could spend the night in the building's most cursed and haunted second floor, and so the next evening did exactly that, with a pistol in his hand for robbers. I guess, and a makeshift pulley line attached to a bell in case he saw anything out of the ordinary. He drank a whole load of courage and tried to get some shut-eye, but well, of course, young Bobby Warboy's story cuts out there when the landlord was awoken by the bell rig ringing incessantly and ran upstairs to check on him. He found Robert Warboys dead as a doornail, slouched in the corner with his eyes bulging in terror. Legend has it that the landlord witnessed an amorphous, shadowy form with slime oozing from it, claws and tentacles and all dripping from its form, suddenly slink back into the shadows of the corner of the room and disappear. And since then, tales of the nameless thing of Berkeley Square are more common than any of us would actually like. Swinging in at number 3, the Kinderhook Blob, which is just a great name, really, isn't it? And if I'm being honest, the legend of the Kinderhook Blob is exactly what cryptid tales are made of, so strap in. It's sometime in 1962 New York, and on 6 separate occasions, multiple witnesses encountered a floating, mysterious blob-like creature that was so terrifying in its form that 2 men armed with shotguns fled in terror. The initial encounter was from a 10-year-old boy named Hallenbeck and his 7-year-old cousin Chari. They were playing in the dense woods nearby their house when all of a sudden they both heard this really high-pitched whistle noise, and suddenly, from behind a nearby pine tree, they witnessed a white amorphous object appear in full view, which slowly began writhing toward them. On 5 more occasions, which insanely would happen over the next 12 years, all the way until 1978, dozens of eyewitnesses would explain in vivid detail similar accounts of an amorphous white blob-like creature that would emerge from the woods, often attaching its tendrils to trees whilst incessantly making its way towards its victims, causing them to flee in terror. So much so that on one occasion 2 grown men tried blowing it to pieces with shotguns to no avail and then turned tail and ran. What I love about this story is the essence of a cryptid tale. For all intents and purposes, the Kinderhook Blob could be a disused weather balloon floating listlessly through the air, but because it was seen multiple times by multiple people in the right setting, the legend of the terrifying white blob quickly became a horrifying reality. Either that or it's a sentient alien life form that's going to consume us all, so yeah. Coming in next at number 2, the disappearance of Peter Grayson. The Groot slang, or the Groot slang, which in Afrikaans loosely translates to big snake, is a legendary creature widely considered to be one of the continent's most prolific cryptids, and is reputed to dwell exclusively in the deep caves and cavernous systems in the Richtersveld, South Africa. According to legend, the Groot slang is a primordial creature that is reputedly as old as the world itself and dwells within what locals refer to as the bottomless pit, which also, conveniently enough, is also filled with precious diamonds. Well, diamonds historically have a proficiency of attracting daring adventurers, and one of those adventurers just so happened to be an English businessman known as Peter Grayson. In 1917, Grayson and a team of excavators began an expedition into the Richtersveld cave system, accompanied by several local guides. After heading out into the rocky desert landscape, and upon hearing that Grayson intended to descend into the bottomless pit, unwittingly the lair of the Groot slang, the local guides quickly left after warning Grayson that they'd lost friends and family to the violent serpent before, and they weren't going to do it again. He shrugged it off and alongside his 2 excavators headed deep into the cave, and well, that's the last that they heard of any of them. The Grayson dynasty faded into obscurity after their patriarch was never seen alive again, but as the legend goes, one of the local guides returned to the cave a day or so later after feeling guilty for abandoning Grayson and his team. At the entrance of the cave, he found the body of an excavator, half of his body actually, to be specific. His legs and most of his torso had been ripped clean off, and he died attempting to crawl back out. What a way to go. And finally, coming in at our number 1 spot, the legend of Jure Grando. And I just have to tell this cryptid story because it's one of my favourites, and it's also considered to be one of the first historical instances of vampirism. As the legend goes, Jure Grando Aljovic was a villager and poor peasant from the region of Istria, which now makes up modern-day Croatia. Historically, he was referred to as a strigoi, strigon or strigun, a local word for something that resembles a vampire and a warlock. Sometime around 1656, Jure died due to an unknown illness, but according to legend, he regularly returned from the grave at night as a vampire to terrorize his village until his decapitation in 1672. The legend tells that for 16 years after his death, Jure would rise from his grave by night and terrorize the village. The village priest Giorgio, who had buried Jure 16 years previously, discovered that at night somebody would knock on the doors around the village, and on whichever door he knocked, someone from that house would die within the next few days. Eventually, the villagers rallied after witnesses saw the corpse of Jure roaming the streets, and led by the town's mayor, chased and tried to kill him with a hawthorn stick, but failed to pierce his supernatural flesh. The next night, 9 people went to the graveyard and dug up Jure's coffin, finding a perfectly preserved corpse with a smile on its face. It was Jure, with pristine white flesh and no signs of decomposition. They tried to stake him once more, but witnesses noted that the stick would not penetrate its flesh. Eventually, the villagers were so terrified and kind of fed up with his vampire antics that a brave villager known as Stepan Milicic took a saw and decapitated the corpse. As soon as it tore Jure's skin, the vampire screamed and blood began gushing from the cut. Allegedly, a man that was presumed dead for 16 years. Yeah. That one's pretty worrying, right? Kicking off at number 5, the Silver Woman. And this story comes from a police motorway patrol woman from Portsmouth, England, who explains that her career regularly confronts her with situations that are both bizarre and unnerving. But this one kind of takes the cake. On the 25th of November around 6:30 PM during a routine speed camera setup in the Portsmouth city centre, her speed trap began picking up random tracings of non-existent objects in pitch black darkness, hurtling past her vehicle at around 30 to 40 miles per hour. Now, I know what you might be thinking, the device was obviously malfunctioning, but that wasn't the case, and our police officer had already thought of that. She trained the camera manually back onto the road surface to see what had been picked up, and she was shocked to discover that on the screen was what could only be described as humanoid figures running up and down the street at about 40 feet ahead of the vehicle. Strangely enough, they seemed to have a silver appearance to them, almost shimmering and translucent. She looked out of the window and again, nothing was there, but when she looked back at the screen, about 10 feet away from the vehicle was one of the same silvery entities standing motionless, facing away from the van, hulking and breathing in a strange fashion, as if they were weighing up taking on the police officer. What were they? Well, we'll never know, and when she played the tape back for her fellow officers, the silvery entities were nowhere to be seen. Yeah, I've got no clue about this one. Coming in at number 4, the Fouke Monster. Now, Bigfoot is obviously the heavy hitter of the cryptid world. People have devoted their entire lives to hunting down the elusive mountain creature, stretching all the way across the wildlands of North America, as well as similar instances across the planet, but there is one little town in America that seems to be the hotspot for these sightings: Fouke, Arkansas, and in 1971 it became the scene of its most terrifying legend. Meet Bobby Ford, a man who vehemently claims he's seen Bigfoot, or a version of it, describing it as 7 feet tall, ridiculously fast and covered in long brown hair. And he saw it up close and personal. It was a Saturday when Bobby and his brother were out hunting a short distance from their rural home when they heard screams in the distance. Bobby's wife, Elizabeth Ford, was frozen in horror when a creature reached through the front window, massive and hairy with glowing red eyes that made no sound except for heavy breathing. When Bobby and his brother ran back to the home, the creature turned and grabbed him as he sprinted up to the porch. It tackled him to the ground with ease and then disappeared into the woodland. The creature had left behind clear tracks in the house and nearby area, 3-toed footprints that matched the deep 3-fingered scratches that were made in the wood of the front porch. Bobby Ford was rushed to hospital and treated for minor wounds and shock, and the family were so terrified by the encounter that they moved out. They'd only lived there a week. That's terrible timing. Next up at number 3, the Grey Man of Ben Macdui. Ben Macdui in Gaelic, Mountain of the Son of Duff, is an awe-inspiring peak of the Scottish Highlands, staking the claim as one of Britain's highest mountains and the highest of the Cairngorms National Park. It's been scaled by countless people throughout history, but there are those that claim that there's something more sinister living out on the mountain: the Grey Man of Ben Macdui, and it doesn't like visitors. The creature is said to be at least 20 feet tall, and one eyewitness to the creature's presence, a respected professor and mountain climber named Norman Colley, said that he was first aware of something following him during his ascent after hearing strange footsteps behind him. Alone, isolated on the mountain, something was following him. And it wasn't human. The footsteps were laborious and delayed, as if that whatever was following him was much, much taller than he was. When he saw it, he described the Grey Man as vaguely human-shaped, brown in hue and fur, and shrouded in a strange grey mist. In 1945, a similar thing happened to a renowned mountain climber named Peter Densham, who described the exact same encounter with the exact same creature. Again, in 1958, the Scots magazine wrote of a similar account from naturalist Alexander Tunian, who this time found himself armed with a rifle and fired several rounds into the grey man. He thought he'd hit it, whatever it was, but after trekking over through the snow, found no sign of the creature. It vanished away like fog rolling across a mountain, and the mystery of the grey man of Ben Macdui remains unsolved. Swinging in at number 2, the Cabbagetown Tunnel Monster, which is an urban legend from my current stomping grounds of Toronto, Ontario, that is grounded in such bizarre circumstances that it remains a warning not to go wandering through the dark tunnels of downtown Toronto. I'm talking about the path. Ever. Don't go there. In 1978, in the eastern Cabbagetown district of Toronto, a 51-year-old man known as Ernest had a terrifying encounter in the network of tunnels that sprawl beneath the city. He had been out searching the neighbourhood for a missing kitten that him and his wife had been raising when he stumbled across a tunnel entrance and decided to explore. After venturing 10 feet into the gloom, Ernest suddenly came across a creature that looked somewhat like a long, thin monkey, around 3 feet in height, with large teeth and covered in grey fur. It had unsettling eyes, he described, that peered out of the darkness in a bright orange hue. Even more unsettling, Ernest claimed that the creature spoke to him. "Go away, go away," it said in a hissing voice before slinking down a tunnel off onto the side. Ernest was reluctant to come forward with his story. He was a respected member of the community and he feared that he'd be ridiculed by his peers, but after being convinced by a friend, he spoke to the Toronto Sun, and a group of journalists and investigators followed him into the same tunnel. Although they didn't see the creature, they did see that the narrow tunnel led to a strange, gloomy chasm that dropped into the unseen sewer system below. And even stranger, they found the maimed, half-eaten carcass of a cat buried loosely beneath the dirt and debris. It permeated the legend of the Cabbagetown Tunnel Monster, and whatever it was, we may never know for sure. Just stay away. And finally, our number 1 spot, the Jersey Devil. Of course, it has to be perhaps one of the most notorious cryptids of all time, the famed Devil of Jersey, whose origin dates all the way back to when New Jersey was still a British colony. Hundreds upon hundreds of tales have been spawned from the legend of the Jersey Devil, dating from the early 1700s right up to recent times. As the legend goes, Mrs. Jane Leeds came from a poor family who carved out an existence in the bleak pine barrens of Jersey, a rugged place with dense forests, sandy soil and deep swamps. In 1735, Mrs. Leeds discovered that she was pregnant with her 13th child, which is, as they say, unlucky for some. Now, Mrs. Leeds wasn't too keen on giving birth, to say the least, and she claimed to friends and relatives that the devil can take the next one. And that's exactly what he did. When the baby was born, it was monstrous, with a scaly reptilian body, a horse's head, bat's wings and a long forked tail. He spread his wings, shot up out of the chimney and soared out across the pine barrens. The legend of the Jersey Devil was born. Now, whatever you think of this cryptid, truth or urban legend, it's the frequency that the Jersey Devil appears in contemporary folklore that is important. Hundreds of people have reported sightings of a strange bat-like creature with wings and a forked tail, flapping its wings across the pine barrens and cackling into the night. In 1816, Joseph Bonaparte, the brother of Napoleon, reported seeing the creature while hunting game in the woods. In 1840, a respected minister pointed his congregation towards a ghastly creature flapping above his church, and in 1909, literally thousands of people saw the same creature on the same day at the same time at multiple locations. In fact, it got so bad that schools had to close down and people just flat out refused to go outside. And still, to this day, New Jersey natives will warn you to tread carefully in the pine barrens.